Brian Rowe doing a deck tech here on Mono Black Control.
Hi, I'm Cody Herring. I'm judging here at the 2 Rags, 2 Riches Pauper tournament at Card Kingdom. I actually played this deck last Rags and the Riches tournament, so I offered to go over a couple of the basics with it. It's a pretty cool deck. It's got a lot of power, especially with High Tide now banned in the Card Kingdom Pauper format.
Well, so what is the main strategy? How does this deck win?
This deck wins by grinding out your opponent, having stupid amounts of card advantage, and winning with bears generally.
Okay, so let's start on the card advantage. What are the cards in here that help with that card advantage?
So the pretty basic ones are, and these are pretty staples of the deck, like pretty much every deck plays 4-ofs for all of these. Sign in Blood, very simple. Black, sorcery, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. You can target yourself early in the game. I've actually won the game before by targeting my opponent with the Sign in Blood after a big Gray Merchant, for example.
That's great.
It's a very versatile card. There's also Phyrexian Rager, which is 2 and a black. It's a creature horror. When Phyrexian Rager comes into play, you draw a card and lose 1 life, so it's just a pretty simple card advantage engine. One of the great things about that is it combos with quite a few cards. Like Unearth is one example. Unearth is another good card example, card advantage engine. It's a black for a sorcery. Choose target creature card in your graveyard with total casting cost 3 or less and put that creature into play. The reason that that's so good is because it also has cycling 2, which means if you don't have any good targets and you're just kind of stuck on mana or on creatures or on other card draw, you can just cycle it at the end of your opponent's turn.
Any other card advantage in here?
Pestilence could be considered card advantage. It's more board control. It's board control and card advantage. But we'll go over that in more the board control.
And then the Chittering Rats.
Chittering Rats is kind of a time walk, or rather a time ebb for your opponent's hand. It's really great when you can play a Chittering Rats and your opponent kills it and you unearth it, because it's basically a mind rot. So Chittering Rats is 1 black. It's a creature rat. It's a little bit of a rat tribal theme in the deck. When Chittering Rats comes into play, target opponent puts a card from his or her hand on top of his or her library. Just basically gets you ahead on cards, sets your opponent back. It's really great against some of the decks like Familiar, which need a high volume of cards to combo off generally.
So this deck has gotten some additions recently with the last few standard sets. What are those cards and why do they matter in this deck?
So the 2 big ones are Gray Merchant of Asphodel and Gurmag Angler. Gray Merchant of Asphodel, standard all-star. Basically what it does is it allows you to be more aggressive with your life total. If you play a couple of like Cuombajj Witches and Chittering Rats and Phyrexian Rager, and you have a couple of Sign-in Bloods, you probably are a little bit lower on life than you would like to be, just simply because many of your cards cost you life as well. And if you have a decent board presence and you play a Gray Merchant of Asphodel, you can get that life back and allow yourself to continue having gas, because your life is very much a resource in this deck.
Let's take a second to go over Cuombajj Witches, one that you just mentioned there. Double black, helps with the Gray Merchant. What the hell is that card?
It's a very old card, originally printed in Arabian Nights, and I believe the reprinted version of Arabian Nights in Chronicles. It's black. It's a summon witches. I believe it's a creature witches in the Oracle text. It's a 1/3, and you can tap it to deal 1 damage to target creature or player of your choice, and 1 damage to target creature or player of an opponent's choice. It seems like a really bad card. In anything but Pauper, it is. What does it do in Pauper? It kills Delvers before they flip. It kills goblins. It kills some stuff in Esper Familiar, like Cloud of Fairies. It just kills a lot of creatures. Another thing that it can do that's really can be good is a lot of the time if you are pressuring your opponent a lot, you have some Chittering Rats and Phyrexian Ragers, aforementioned bears, and you're able to kill a lot of your opponent's creatures, you can pressure their life total by just pinging them every turn with the Cuombajj Witches. And they'll just typically ping you back because it only does 1 damage back.
Okay, so there was one other recent card that has made it into this deck, and what was that?
So the Germek Angler kind of made this deck even better. The Gurmag Angler, for all intents and purposes, is a 1-drop 5/5. It's 6 and a black, delve, 5/5.
Your Pauper Tarmogoyf there. That guy's amazing.
It's really good.
So what have you got for a removal suite in here?
So the deck that we're running here has a little bit less removal than the one that I was running. I was running a bit more removal heavy suite. For as far as removal goes, you primarily rely on edicts, such as Chainer's Edict. Chainer's Edict is great in the early game, and being able to flash it back is a really awesome late game threat against some of the decks that are able to go late game against you, like the Mirror, for example. Pestilence is a great one of or two of. Pestilence is 2 black enchantment. At the end of each turn, if no creatures are in play, sacrifice it. 1 black to deal 1 damage to each creature or player. Board wipes are at a premium in Pauper. It's pretty much just that and Crypt Rats and a few other ones. I don't really know if there's any. So that acts as a really, if you have a Grey Merchant of Asphodel or something down, you can basically prevent anything with toughness less than 4 from staying alive ever. Another just great instant speed removal card is Victim of the Night. As far as I know, there's very few targets that are commonly played that doesn't hit. Nightscape Familiar is like the only one that doesn't hit, which is usually not a card you care too much about. Because when you're playing against familiars, you want to kill the combo pieces, not the make my cards cheaper pieces. Tendrils of Corruption is also good. It's 3 and a black instant. It deals X damage to target creature, and you gain X life, where X is the number of swamps you control. It's a really good way to stabilize against Delver. Pretty good way to stabilize against any creature deck, and the fact that its instant speed removal is great. It also plays Echoing Decay. Target creature and all other creatures with the same name as that creature get -2/-2 until end of turn for 1 and a black, and it's an instant. Also great against Delvers. You'll hear that theme in this deck a lot. Also good against familiars. Really good against goblins. Like kill 10 of your goblin tokens. Nice Crank Host command. And Corrupt plays dual purpose. It's 5 and a black sorcery. Deals 1 damage to target creature or player for each swamp you control, and you gain that much life back. You can use it either as removal if you're under a lot of pressure. It can even kill opposing Germek Anglers typically, because you typically have enough swamps to do that. Or you can use it to kill your opponent.
Okay. And then Oubliette.
Oubliette's one of those cards that they printed where there was too much text and they had to shrink it way down, and it's old and it looks weird, but it's really cool. It's one of those cool cards that is more expensive than the entire rest of the deck in Pauper, just because it's Arabian Nights. So I'm gonna read it in its entirety real quick. Select a creature in play when Oubliette is cast, and it says for 1 black. That creature is considered out of play as long as Oubliette is in play. Hence, the creature cannot be the target of spells or abilities and cannot receive damage, use special powers, attack, or defend. All counters and enchantments on the creature remain but are also out of play. If Oubliette is removed, creature returns to play tapped. Weird templating back in the day. Basically, it's closer to phasing something out than to O-ringing it, but in practice it's an O-ring. It's important because the counters and enchantments stay on it, so it's not actually exiled, but very little enchantment hate in the format.
Crazy old card.
Yep.
So quickly on the sideboard, what are really the decks you're going after, and what cards do you have for those?
So, what decks are good against us is the question I always ask when I'm building a sideboard. Esper Familiars can just win out of the blue. So you want to have a good amount of protection against that. It's actually a creature-based deck. If you're able to kill their Cloud of Fairies at the right moment, you can actually kill their combo a lot of the time. So one of the big things for that is I play 3 Duresses. That's good against Burn. It's good against the Esper Familiars. It's pretty good against Delver most of the time, so you can take their days or whatever you want. Also good against Esper Familiars is Wrench Mind. It's black sorcery. Target player discards 2 cards unless they discard an artifact. Just ends up being a 2-drop Mind Rot, which is not bad against a combo deck. Victim of the Night, one as a sideboard, another Tendrils of Corruption, and another Echoing Decay. Also good against familiars is Nihil Spellbomb, because their deck is very much graveyard based. They have to get their stuff back with Archaeomancer, is the typical combo. That's not how they all work. But yeah, I won multiple games against the High Tide familiar version that was being played just by holding up Nihil Spellbomb for a really long time. And it's also a way to get card advantage against the mirror. I would definitely play it if I thought my opponent was going to play a Gurmag Angler and just cycle it, essentially. Good against goblins is Shrivel. All creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn. Can also be good against Delver because they play, if you can hit an unflipped Delver, you can hit their Cloud of Fairies. I don't know if I'd bring that in, even though Cloud of Fairies is one of the combo pieces, I don't know if I'd bring that in against Esper Familiars. For all the different versions of Tron out there, there's Choking Sands. Choking Sands can also be good against the Familiars deck because they play bounce lands. So that's a thought.
Yeah, setting them back 2 turns seems decent.
Yeah, and doing damage to them at the same time is pretty good. And other than that, it's just a couple more removal spells to hedge out the existing matchups. If you are playing against Delver, you generally want removal spells. The one kind of cool card in the sideboard is Font of Return, which is just basically if you're in a really grindy matchup like against the mono black control mirror, you can play that, and it's 1 black enchantment, 3 and a black, sacrifice it, return up to 3 target creature cards from the graveyard to your hand. So imagine playing that, getting back a Phyrexian Rager, a Chittering Rats, and a Grey Merchant of Asphodel.
Yeah,
you're going to be doing pretty well after that.
Ancestral Recall there for you.
A little bit.
What do you think the best matchup and the worst matchup is for this deck?
This deck is kind of built to prey on Delver decks. It does not do well against the Kuldotha Jeskai decks because with their just massive amounts of card advantage, it's very difficult to beat that because your plan is generally just to make sure that your opponent has less cards in hand than you do and to remove their creatures. And when they're doing silly things like bouncing the Ichor Wellspring and just drawing lots of cards, it's difficult to beat that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Last question here. What do you think may win today?
I think with High Tide Band, there's a good chance that people will be playing Burn.
Okay.
And I think that we'll see at least one Burn deck in the top 8, whereas I don't think we saw anybody playing Burn last time because it's a good deck. But against High Tide, it's not.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for checking out this deck tech, and thank you to Cody for doing it. I'm working my way through some of my past videos here to let people know there's going to be another Rags to Riches tournament hosted by Card Kingdom March 5th at their Ballard location. Registration is still open for it. This has been a really popular series, although it's called Last Crusade. I believe they're going to be doing these as long as people keep showing up. This one has a first place of a Cavern of Souls, Verdant Catacomb, Grove of the Burn Willows, and Horizon Canopy. Very nice prize support there. Thank you also to everybody who is over on Patreon supporting the channel. I greatly appreciate it. I've got a bunch more content queued up that I'm trying to work through right now, and I hope to get some of it done before I head out to Germany next week to visit a bunch of fans of the channel. I'll let you know a little bit more about that a little bit later this week. Take care.